guys, it's Anna. Welcome back. I'm super excited about today's video because I'm going to be teaching you and kind of walking you through my process of unraveling a sweater for yarn. This is a really fun thing to do. Honestly, I think it's super cool, the fact that you can like find a sweater, see how the yarn works up, and like a yarn, especially if there's a fiber content that's more expensive that you wouldn't normally buy just in yarn format, and you can get a lot of yarn from it and then make whatever you want from it. It's just really cool. I just recently did this with a sweater and I posted this video showing the process, and I wanted to make a little bit more in depth of a video explaining how I do it, how you can do it, and yeah, because I think I did my first unraveling experience when there wasn't a ton of information online. I feel like there were only a few videos, and so a lot of it was trial and error, and I made a lot of errors. So I think this is kind of the video that I wish I would have had. There is more, more resources now, so that's great. I will say there's also a subreddit. It's literally just called Unravelers, and it's for people who unravel sweaters, and it's actually really big. Like I feel like I thought this was a really small little niche, but a lot of people actually do this, which is so cool. Basically all that to say that this video is a guide, but it's really hard to do a tutorial for this kind of thing because every sweater is so different and the makeup of every sweater is so different, and there's so many different things that could happen and things you could run into that aren't going to work or that you have to problem solve and figure out and pivot, and it's impossible to show every single scenario that could happen with something so unpredictable like this. So I wanted to kind of get that disclaimer out there that this is just a guide and kind of showing my process, but there is going to be some trial and error, and you are probably going to be frustrated at some point because I know I am, and I still am every single time I do this, and this is not my first time doing it. So I wanted to put that out there. Some people might not even think that this is worth it and would rather just go get yarn. So just something to mention. But what I was talking about with the subreddit is that if you do have any questions and things that weren't addressed in this video, you can actually go on there and people can help you troubleshoot, and you can post pictures and stuff of what is going on and the questions you have, things like that, because again, this video can only do so much. But also feel free to leave a comment below and I can try and help as much as I can. Again, I'm not an expert, so I'm like kind of like, should I was debating on whether I should even make this since I'm not an expert, but I feel like there's not a ton of resources and videos on this, so I figured I'd make it, but like give a disclaimer that I'm not by any means an expert on this. So I first just want to get into what you should even look for when you are looking for a sweater to unravel, whether it's one for your closet that you were just going to donate anyway, or you're thrifting. There are some things that you should definitely be on the lookout for. So the first one is the fiber content, the yarn itself. You just want to make sure that this is actually a yarn you would actually use and can see yourself using and making something with. So whether that means the actual fiber is one that you like. Some people, it wouldn't be really worth it for them to unravel a 100% acrylic sweater because that yarn is so affordable. So it really just depends on what you're looking for. So a lot of people will unravel more luxury yarns, like if it has cashmere or wool or even just a cotton, just higher price and nicer yarns that are just more worth the effort, I think is commonly what people would go for. That being said, the sweater I'm going to be unraveling and showing you is a 100% acrylic sweater, so it's all up to you what you want to do, but just make sure that the yarn is something that you would actually want to crochet or knit or whatever you're going to do with this with. And then going off of that, you want to make sure that the yarn itself is a good thickness. This is an example of a yarn that you just wouldn't want to have afterwards, probably. It's way too thin. So actually look really closely at the sweater and see the thickness of the yarn and see if that's a good thickness for you. I will go off on a tiny little tangent on this. One issue, this is like the only issue that I've ever really come across when unraveling sweaters, and from what I've seen and experienced, I'm not sure if you're able to see that this is the case before you actually start unraveling, which is really frustrating. It actually was knit with 2 strands of yarn, so I ended up just winding it all the two strands together, but it makes it a lot more difficult to actually unwind because it's not just two strands like held together. I don't know, I don't knit and I've never like machine knit anything, so I don't really know the process, but basically when you start to unravel the sweater, you'll see that one strand comes from this side, goes to the other side, but then to come back, this strand also has to go like in front of it all the way to the end. So you kind of have to like go like this, if that makes sense, and it just takes so much longer and it's so much more frustrating than what is the more traditional thing, that the most common thing that I see in sweaters, which is just like one strand of yarn that you can just unravel back and forth, and it's so much faster. So unfortunately this sweater was two strands of yarn, and I just had to do a lot of like babysitting and making sure that things weren't getting caught and uncatching them when they did inevitably get caught. So that was really unfortunate, but it's still doable. I will say I think like I've seen that it's more common that that's the case in a situation where you have like a variegated or multicolor yarn, like if you have a black and a white yarn that are kind of mixed together. I've seen that they might do that kind of situation where they have two strands of that yarn going at the same time to kind of average the color out in case there's variations in color. So that's just something to note, but like this isn't really a variegated yarn. It's just one color and it still was with two strands. So something to consider. It also seems that like a cotton yarn is more likely to be this way for whatever reason. That's kind of just anecdotally, but something to consider. That is like one complication that could happen, and that would really be unfortunate. And then I'm also going to recommend that when you're looking for sweaters, you aren't picking very complicated sweaters, and I would recommend for your first one just pick the most basic simple sweater with no like embellishments or complications or anything like extra going on the sweater and the makeup of the sweater, no pockets, things like that. It's just gonna make it harder to unravel. Again, like I keep saying these things and then I'm doing the opposite, but this is a sweater I'm unraveling, so it does have this little part at the top, and we'll see when I'm unraveling it if it's too much. If it's too much, I will literally just cut that part off and just unravel the rest, because there's still a ton of yarn and the back doesn't have that either, so I'm not too concerned about that. But yeah, for your first one, especially like even a cardigan, I think it's so much easier to just have a regular sweater that just has a front panel, a back panel, and then sleeves. I think that's the best bet to start with, just so you're not making life harder, especially when you're first trying to learn this and experience this and figure out how to unravel a sweater. And then the next thing, which is the most important thing when looking for a sweater, and the other ones are kind of like more preference-y things, but this is a non-negotiable. If you don't have the proper seams, then you will not be able to unravel your sweater. So I'm just realizing now that actually I have some improper seams in here that I didn't even realize that I had. But basically you want to make sure that your seams are not machine sewn and that instead they are crocheted. So I'll show you what I mean here. I'll also put another video, but basically the seams are just crocheted together. So if you look at the side, you can kind of see, you'll see V's on the side. It's a little bit hard to see because it's usually done in the same color, but you'll see more when I show how to actually do it. That is what you want when you're unraveling a sweater. And what you don't want is actually, they have machine sewn seams on here, which I didn't realize when I bought this. I just now realized this, but luckily not all the seams are machine sewn, but it's a good example that I can show you to avoid seams like this. So this is a machine sewn seam. As you can see, a sewing machine actually sewed these panels together. And if you were to unravel this, then you're not going to be able to like properly unseam these because it's just so much thread, and when it's just yarn that's crocheting it together, you can actually feasibly do it. But even if you were to get them separated, if your sweater is completely machine sewn, then it's probably, instead of knitting a panel or multiple panels and then sewing them together, they probably made this huge sheet of knit fabric and then cut the panels out of them and then sewed them together, and they sewed them together with a machine because they would unravel if you didn't. So if you did try to then unravel those panels that were cut and then sewn, then it would just completely, the yarn would not be one single strand that you could then reuse. It would be like 5,000 different tiny strands. So that is super important and needs to be followed regardless. So just make sure that you have crocheted seams, not machine sewn seams. So yeah, it all just comes down to what would be worth it. If there's a yarn that you really like that is acrylic, even if it just has a fun design or a fun color. Like I really liked this pink color, and also my thrift store just did not have good sweaters, so I just picked like the cutest one that I found, honestly. But normally I would probably stick to like a cotton, like this is a cotton yarn, or a wool or cashmere, something like that, just to be a little bit more worth it. But overall you're still gonna get a lot of yarn, so it's completely up to you about what is or isn't worth it. And so once you have a sweater that you like, you then want to wash it. I have seen people say that, you know, they wash the sweater first and then they unravel it and then they wash the yarn again, which I'm sure is probably best practice. And by all means, if you want to do that, then do that. But I just don't. I've never done that. I'm going to be so upfront and honest about that. I've never washed my yarn after unraveling. I just wash the sweater. Another reason that people do wash it after, which I am just now thinking about, is that when you unravel it, and you can kind of see it on this yarn, it's gonna have some like memory from how it was knit up in the sweater. So it's not gonna be like the yarn that you would buy at the store where it's flat and straight. This isn't a problem for me. In most things that I'm making, I don't think it's any harder for me to actually crochet with yarn that's got a little ramen noodle effect to it. But if you were doing like a super loose stitch or something that requires the yarn to be straight, then you would want it to be straight, and so washing it would help with that and just relax the fiber and get rid of that kink that it has. But again, I'm gonna do what I need to do and no more for most things in life, so I don't do that either. But just wanted to put it out there in case you wanted to do that. And I'm sure like there are other resources online for more information on that if you're interested. But I think that's pretty much the intro in like finding a sweater. Again, I'll just say go to the thrift store or just find a sweater that you don't want or really care about to start with this, because I don't want to be the reason that you ruin a sweater that you really care about or like really like the sweater itself and would be upset if the yarn wasn't salvageable. So just be okay with that and get a really cheap sweater. Get like the 50% off sale sweaters at Goodwill, something like that to start, and maybe just be okay with the fact that there is a potential that your sweater will not be unravelable. So that's just kind of the mindset that you have to have going into it. But yeah, it'll be fine, but like be okay if it's not. But yeah, now I'm just gonna get into how I'm actually going to unravel this sweater and just walk you through it, and we're gonna figure out together, because like I said, every sweater is different and I might run into problems. Honestly, seeing these machine sewn seams is kind of stressing me out, and the button. Like I don't know really what I was thinking when I bought this, but I think it's good that I have a little bit of an extra challenging one for the video, because if I was going to do one in the video, it should be one that's a little harder, that's, you know, so if you have one that's more simple, it's easier. So let's just get into it. So to actually start the process, things you'll need, obviously you'll need your sweater, and then a seam ripper is ideal. I think you can also use scissors, definitely, and you shouldn't have any problems. I just think a seam ripper is a little bit easier to get into the seams and cut them without cutting the actual fabric of the sweater, which is very important. So I recommend a seam ripper if you have it, but you can use small scissors if that's all you have. And then this is also optional, but I highly recommend it. It's a yarn winder. I will put a link to the one that I use and recommend, but there's tons of them online. I just like this one because it's like a little bit more heavy duty, but this is gonna help with actually winding the yarn into cakes once we are unraveling the panels. So I highly recommend this for sure. But if you don't want to use a yarn winder, you could always just wind the yarn into balls by hand. So the first step is just going to be to turn this inside out so we can see what we're working with, since we're going to be working with all of the seams on the inside of the sweater. So now we can kind of see what's going on here. Again, I don't know how I missed these machine sewn seams, but we're just gonna move past it. But basically you can start anywhere really, but I'll show you again like kind of what I'm talking about with the seams. You can kind of see those V's that run across the side. So obviously we have the two parts of our panels right there connected right down the middle. And then if you look at the side, you'll see the V's right there. And this might show it a little bit better. So those V's on the side are the actual slip stitches holding the panels together. And then you can see up here we have the two actual panels there. So it is a little bit hard to see because they want it to be hard to see. They use the same yarn usually. So that's the V's that we're looking at that we're going to be ripping out. So to start, you are going to pick really anywhere. I don't know that there's a best way to start, but I usually just start kind of at the top because that makes the most sense to me. And so we are actually going to be cutting those chains and then unraveling them. So there's a very specific way that you want to, or a direction that you want to unravel from. You can kind of see it's a little bit like matted, but you can see that the point of the V is going this way to the right. Sorry, I'm like, the point is going this way. So you have a V like that. You are gonna wanna start from this side and then unravel this way. And that's what's gonna allow you to like just pull the thread and then completely unravel it. And so we are gonna wanna start over here and kind of go in the direction of the point of the V. So I'm actually gonna start at the end of this sleeve since that's where, you know, my V's go to. And honestly, the end of a sleeve is kind of hard sometimes, and it's sometimes not even connected in the same way. So I might just start right after the sleeve and I'll show you how we're gonna unravel. So we're just gonna find those V's. I'm gonna keep saying that, but it's right there is a really good, you can kind of see it. It's these right here. And you're gonna go to like the first one and make sure you are only touching that one. Make sure you're not cutting the actual yarn of the sweater, but you're gonna cut that thread that's crocheting this together. And then you can see we've kind of cut the thread there. Then you're gonna just kind of tease, you're gonna go into the stitch right after that and you're gonna kind of tease it up so it pulls the loop out. So I'm not cutting anything, I'm just literally pulling this out so I can try and get this stitch loose. So just pull it up and pull that yarn out of there like that. And now you should hopefully be able to pull it. So mine's not really going. So we might have to do some more investigation and see, maybe that was for the previous, maybe that's for like this. That might be for the stitching down the sleeve, so it might not have worked. So I'm gonna try it again. So I still have this loop and you wanna pull it so that we can find that loose end. And if you need to cut again, that's fine, I might just cut. Oh, okay, so we have this end right here. So I think I was right that that end that I originally pulled was for this sleeve, the cuff part. So I got my end loose and now you can just literally start pulling it out and you'll see that it's just pulling the thread out. And your yarn might snag a little bit, so maybe give it a little tug, but you don't want to tug so much that you break the yarn. But you can see it's literally just pulling apart at the seams. And so you can also kind of help it this way by pulling the sides apart that way. But you should be able to literally just grab this thread and start pulling and just unraveling it. So I'm just gonna keep doing this until it won't let me unravel anymore. And so it's even going over this seam, which is amazing because it went up like the whole sleeve and now it's going down the side of the sweater. So it's all in one go, which is perfect. So I'm gonna probably be able to get all the way down. And we're about to come up on this tag here, which is also perfect, so I can show you how we will remove that. I'll see if it even lets me pull this out. No, I'll just remove it first, just to make things easier. So when you have a tag like this, it might be good to keep this tag. Actually, this one doesn't say, oh yeah, it does. It says the makeup of the yarn, so if you don't know the makeup and want to remember it and keep it with your yarn, you can save this tag. But what you're gonna do, it might be a little bit hard to see because it's black thread, but there's black thread tying this or sewing this onto the garment, and you just want to break that black thread. So it starts right here on the end like that. So I'm just going to seam rip that, and then you can kind of pull it a little bit. That didn't really do anything. And then I'm just going to go to the next stitch, and I'm just going through every stitch and just pulling out these black threads that are sewing it to the sweater. And it should just kind of pull away pretty easily. And if you start to pull it, you can kind of see the threads connecting it, and you can do it from this way too. Like I can see that thread and just kind of pull it out at the end. I'm gonna keep, there we go. So I got that out, and now I just have a couple more like threads stuck in there, but we're pretty good now. So I can keep unraveling, and there's some black thread still in there that was lurking and kind of getting in my way. So I'm just kind of pulling that out as I go. It actually looks like they also used a pink thread that matches the yarn, so I didn't notice, but there is some residual thread that they also used to reinforce that I'm gonna get rid of now. Kind of hard to see, but I've got it there, and I'm just cutting that. They really wanted this tag to be secure. There we go. And then I'm just pulling out the extra threads. This seam ripper has little tweezers attached to it, which is kind of nice because you can just go in there and perform a little surgery pulling out these threads. I think I got it, but we'll see. Yes, I did. And then this should take me pretty much to the end. See, I think it is, yeah. Yeah, so it took me almost completely to the end. I'm confused. Okay, so again, they used some thread to sew this onto here for some reason. So I'm gonna cut that thread. I've actually never had this happen before, so it's good that this is happening on camera so I can show you. And it's kind of hard to see, but there's some thread in there. So I'm just gonna kind of go in there. Make sure you're not cutting anything important, just cutting this thread. Looks like this is how they secured down the slip stitching that they did. They like sewed down the end. So there we go. That is it. Just a couple more threads. Every time I think I get them, I realize that I did not. So there you go. This is the slip stitch that is all completely undone. And so we've kind of separated the panels here, but still have some more. I'm gonna try to get this bottom part of the sleeve, the cuff, undone. Yeah, so it looks like they did the same thread thing over here with the pink thread. I just didn't realize because it's pink and it blends in. But I'm just gonna try and cut these threads that are sewing the single crochet part down. So another kind of method for unraveling, if the V's are giving you too much trouble, you can literally just pull it apart and see how it's being connected there by this yarn and just cut that yarn. You have to be really careful and make sure you're not cutting the actual panel itself, but if you pull it apart enough, you should be able to see like what is the yarn that you're able to cut and what isn't. Like this is the yarn that we're cutting, so you can kind of tease that out. And so these very innermost threads right here can be cut and are part of this. So I'm just gonna start kind of just cutting. You have to be really careful here. That's why I recommend just going off with the V's, but it was giving me too much trouble, so I'm just gonna cut these and just kind of pull it apart and see what you can pull on its own without cutting, because that's always gonna be the most safe way of doing this. But just kind of pull it apart, and then those center pieces you can just pull out. All right, I did All right, I finished up that sleeve, just kept doing what I was doing honestly, and just made sure it's super important that you're not cutting the panel. So pull it apart, really be sure that it actually is the strand sticking it, holding the two together and not the actual panel itself. And then I did the exact same thing on the other side. And again, just had to deal with cutting some of these, like the thread that they use to hold this together, but I was able to do it all in one go, starting from the sleeve, so, or the cuff. I keep saying sleeve, I mean the cuff. And so I did the same thing that I just did on this side on the other side. And now to do kind of like the shoulder seams, you can kind of see though that the V's are like this, headed that way, like that, if that makes sense. So that means that we're gonna start at the end this way, because you want to start at the end of this direction. Hopefully I'm explaining that in a good job, but yeah, I'm just following the seam all the way over here. And again, you might see this kind of chain that they do to secure the end. You can actually kind of start there if you want. So I might just cut that off so that we don't have any like knots or anything. And honestly, like I just pulled it apart and it's already coming. So just grab one of these strands. Yeah, and it's literally already coming apart. So if you have those like chains, then you can literally just cut them and then kind of pull it apart and it'll do it for you. But if you didn't have that, you would just do the same thing that we did on the sleeve, where you just find one of the first V's and just cut that V and then kind of tease it out from the chain right in front of it, and then you can just pull it the same way. So that actually worked out perfectly. Interested to see if it'll stop when we get here. Yes, unfortunately it does. So at this machine sewn point, it looks like maybe it got sewn over. I might honestly just quit here. I'm gonna cut this yarn so I don't have this huge tail bothering me, but I'm gonna leave this here and then just start again right on the other side, and then we'll see at the end, once we get a little bit more taken off, how to completely detach this. But I'm just doing what I normally do. So find that first V or one of the first V's, cut it, and then go in the V right behind it. And we're not cutting this one, but we're just like pulling it up so that the one that we just cut can kind of go underneath it. And ooh, that one did not work. Okay, I might cut this one again. Just at the beginning, you'll probably get some struggles, especially if there's like thread involved and they're sewing things together. But I'm just gonna try it again. There we go. And now, oh, maybe not. Question mark. I thought I got it, but apparently not. I might have to loop it under one more time. I'm just gonna keep trying to do this. I don't know what happened with that one. I really thought I got it, but I'm gonna cut it one more time. I'm just gonna cut this loop because I see it right there. This is the reality of it, is that like you'll have little frustrating moments like this where it just doesn't seem to want to work right. And it just doesn't make sense, but okay, I'm like pulling it apart and that's actually helping a lot. And then that, okay, that gave me my piece of yarn. I'm trying to like figure out where it went. Worst case, if you do get in a situation like this, you can just keep doing this all the way down, like just spreading it like we did on, you know, earlier where I showed you, and I was just like individually going back up through the cuff and cutting the threads. Like you can do this all the way down. It's just kind of dangerous because you're more prone to cutting something that you shouldn't cut. But I'm just like, I'm gonna try again. So I'm going on the side here. Just gonna cut this loop, and then the next loop we're gonna pull this out. Ooh, I think that might have worked. I think it, well, it keeps getting stuck. Okay, maybe. Yes, okay. And so that just goes to show like things will happen and it'll be frustrating, but just keep trying. And I literally figured out like right at the end, which is annoying. But I'm gonna come back to up here where it was connected, and as you can see, like since we got it separated the rest of the way down, you can really see where it is connected and where it needs to be separated. So like this thread here, it's like not even attached. We can just, I like to pull things out as much as I can and avoid cutting wherever possible, just again to avoid cutting something you don't want. But like I know that these threads can be cut. There we go. Didn't even need to really be cut. And then here, again, like this thread here, you can just kind of pull out. This is the thread that we started with. And yeah, here is where it's been sewn, I think. So we're gonna have to get in there and just cut these threads. And again, this is like right at the top of the panel, so I'm not too concerned, but I don't think I cut anything that I wasn't supposed to there. Maybe, actually I might have right there, we'll see. But it's right at the top, so I really am not that concerned about it. And then we are not obviously gonna be able to unravel this because it's machine sewn, and I should have seen that and probably not picked the sweater, but it's okay. So now we're gonna do this last connector here. So this whole sleeve now is removed, and we will get back to that once we're ready to actually unravel. But for right now, not dealing with this because we still have to remove this sleeve. So we're gonna do the same thing that we literally just did on the other side. Hopefully this one goes a little bit more smoothly, but again, once we get to this machine sewn part, it might be slightly annoying. And by the way, for these like pieces of yarn, I just throw them away, but you could save them, use them as stuffing or something. Oh look, that was perfect. But yeah, usually it's not really worth me keeping. So now this panel for the sleeve is also detached, and now we have all, oh, I was about to say we all have separate panels. We don't because of this machine part, but I'm not gonna be able to detach that, unfortunately, with my seam ripper, so I might just have to cut this. So I'm just gonna grab some scissors, and I'm gonna do this on the side, the front panel that I'm already a little bit worried about with the buttons and such, and I'm gonna cut on that side, but I guess I'll have to cut on both sides to unravel anyway. But yeah, well, it shouldn't be an issue, hopefully. We'll see. I'm not totally sure. We're only losing a little bit of yarn though, so we'll see. But now for the actual unraveling process. So I think I'm gonna start with the sleeves because I think that's the simplest and has the least complication going on. So we're starting here with this sleeve, and we're gonna start at the top here. And basically you can see, you should see some sort of like chain here. So just similar to how we had the slip stitch chains, this is how they fasten off. I don't know the terms, the knitting terms. I'm not someone who knits. So if you are, you probably have an advantage and can understand the makeup of this a little bit more. But I'm gonna show you just kind of how I start. So I like to start on this end here. I'm just getting any like extra, like there's some threads in here that I don't want, like moving all of that out of the way. And I'm gonna start by just cutting one of these chains so I can start to kind of get going. And then you can just pull this yarn through, and this might be a little trial and error. So I'm kind of pulling this out. And sometimes you'll do this first row and then it'll come off. That's okay, especially the first couple rows. Sometimes things just get cut. So we'll just pick up another loop and try again. And maybe this one will work. Yeah, so this one seems to be our continuing piece of yarn. So now what I'm gonna do is grab my yarn winder, and this yarn is definitely snagging a lot since it's a little bit like matted together, but I'm gonna grab my yarn winder and I'm gonna start winding this. Okay, I'm at this other desk to actually wind and unravel because my other desk was too thick for my yarn winder, but you're just gonna attach it on to your yarn winder And then now you're just gonna wind. Obviously you don't have to have a yarn winder. Like I said, you could just wind this by hand, but this is gonna be so much easier. So just watch and see. My yarn is snagging a little bit, so it might not be quite as smoothly as it could have been, but I'll just show you. Yeah, I kind of have to like pull out some yarn and then wind it, which is a little bit annoying. This is the yarn that I got from finishing up that sleeve. I didn't have any other issues and didn't have to like sacrifice any yarn, which is nice. I did just have to like, it kept snagging because it is a little bit felted, and you will find that more with acrylic or maybe wool yarn. Cotton, I feel like, is the least likely to get felted like that, but it wasn't a big deal. Just kind of had to keep tugging on it and dealing with it, but definitely not as bad as when I had those 2 strands and had to wind that, so it could always be worse. So now I want to try doing this panel here, and honestly I'm like trying to think about how I want to do this. So I'm looking and actually realizing that this part is connected here, so I might actually take off this part here because I didn't realize it was seamed on there. So I'm gonna try and unseam this and then see what we can do. Okay, finally got it. That like took way too long. There we go. Finally got this little thing off. So now I'm just gonna try to unravel this. So I'm gonna start, again, remember I cut this, so this is an example of when you're probably gonna get a ton of like false starts at the beginning. So I'm just gonna start kind of picking this apart and see if I can get some yarn going. So I have the chains here and I am just gonna cut them off. I don't know if that's proper, but a lot of this is already cut anyway, so it doesn't really matter. We're gonna have to just work our way down here until we can get a continuous strand, since we already cut some. It's like you're gonna see a lot of just yarn breaking and not having a continuous strand, but eventually we will get a continuous strand. So I'm just kind of pulling it apart. Again, like we're not really gonna have anything until we get to this level, so I'm not too worried about it. Just trying to get all of this extra yarn out of there. I think this one, yeah, is also gonna, and just kind of pull it apart until you can get something started. We should be getting close maybe to having an actual working strand. No, actually, maybe, nope. I'm not gonna keep saying that we're getting close because I don't know. Oh, actually, never mind. Okay, we did actually get it this time. So now I'm gonna take this to my winder, and I made a mess, but it's fine. So I unwound this top part, but unfortunately I don't know really anything about knitting. I'm not a knitter, so I don't really know the construction of knitwear, so I didn't realize it was gonna be like disconnected here. So I'm gonna have to unravel this part like I just did this one, and then I guess reattach here as well, or maybe this will continue. I don't know how this works. I'm guessing maybe this will continue the whole way, but really have no clue. So we're gonna see, but I'm gonna have to start again up here, just like I did on the other side, trying to find that initial start. And I know like the yarn here is gonna not be the full length because I cut it, but yeah, I'm doing the same thing over. I just wanted to like let you know what I was doing in case that's helpful at all, but that's kind of the plan. Okay, first of all, I was able to unravel the rest of it all in one go, which is wonderful, and I'm doing it right now. But I just wanted to like show you my method. Since obviously it keeps snagging, I have to like do it by hand, but I can't do it all in one pile or it'll get tangled. So this is my method, is just like do a really, really long trail of the yarn and then wind it all. And then once I use all this, I do the same thing. And that's just what I've been doing. Really looks silly, but don't hate, it works, okay? But yeah, I'm just gonna do this, and then I have just 2 more panels to do. Drum roll, please. So this is all of the yarn that I got. I finished up all of the other panels. Didn't have any issues. I did have to cut off the top of the back panel as well, just like the front, because it had those machine sewn seams there. So I wasted a tiny bit of yarn there, but like I had no other choice really. And yeah, I also had to seam rip the back tag, which I didn't show, but it was the same thing as doing the tag on the inside seam. So no issues, and really got a lot of yarn here. I'm gonna go measure exactly how much I got. The total weight ended up being about 350 grams of yarn. We ended up with about 350 total grams, which is a lot of yarn. I was trying to classify this into what yarn it would be so I could do kind of a cost breakdown of what I did versus just buying a similar yarn. And I think I would compare this to a superfine yarn. I don't think it's focusing, but you can kind of see the thickness. Ignore like how bunched up it is, but I think it's a superfine. I don't think it's quite a lace weight. So that's what I'm gonna be comparing it to. I found this yarn, which I think is pretty similar on Hobie, which is like my go-to place. I feel like they have pretty affordable yarns, and it's super accessible. So that's kind of my like standard place to look. So that's what I'm comparing this to. If I did my math correctly, then I would have had to spend $35 on this Hobie yarn to get roughly the same amount of this yarn. And I spent a little over $5 on the sweater at Goodwill, which by the way is expensive. Goodwill did not used to be this expensive, so that's a story for another day. But yeah, so 5 over 35 is what? About 14%. So I think that's a pretty good deal. Obviously, this took a lot of time, and I'm not factoring that into it because, you know, I think it's a fun experience, and you also factor in the fact that this was a sweater that you gave a second life and you're not buying new acrylic yarn. So I think that's a factor that could be taken into account. But yeah, I mean, it was worth it for me for sure. Wasn't really a hard process. It just takes a long time, especially because the yarn kept snagging, and that was a whole process there, but really didn't have any like issues, and the buttons didn't end up causing a problem for me. So now I just have to figure out what I want to make with this. So please comment below if you have any suggestions. I'll show you the yarn again. It's pretty thin, so keep that in mind. I was thinking maybe something like filet crochet could be cool, since I've never done that. And yeah, I would love to make a video kind of showing how I do it, and maybe not tutorial style because I've never done it, like I said, but like a crochet with me, I would definitely, I think I'm gonna do that. Make some sort of crochet with me vlog type video making whatever I make with this. But let me know if you have any suggestions. But anyway, I hope that you learned something from this, or that it was helpful in some way. I know I'm not an expert, but I hope that you got some insights from this, or at least were inspired or entertained, or I don't know, something positive. But let me know if you end up unraveling your own sweater. I would love to see it. So send me a DM or something, or comment or something. I would love to see if you like follow this and unravel your own sweater. And then if you make something with that, I want to see that too. But that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching and being here and supporting. Subscribe if you're not already. I'm like kind of close to 100K, which is mind-blowing, because then I get the like play button, which is so crazy to me. So subscribe if you want to support me, and yeah, thank you for watching. All my socials are down below, like always, if you want to follow me there. But that's it. Bye.